an article, a research, and the headline reads, "What clinical research says about the long-term safety of Ozempic?"
Yeah. So, this is kind of, I hope we don't offend anybody.
Hey, we're gonna offend people.
Yeah.
Let the offending begin.
Yeah. I'll just kind of give my 2 cents on this. And this is for Ozempic or for any of the drugs that have been used to achieve weight loss. And as we've discussed earlier, I think the biggest problem I have with using drugs to lose weight is it takes away the accountability and the responsibility of, being, or in the discipline, ultimately having discipline about what you eat, how you live, your exercise, all those things. And I understand there's some people that are more predisposition to gain weight, but in the end, what is long lasting? Discipline. Discipline is what will keep the weight off in the healthy way. Now, granted, I understand there is levels of weight that are dangerous, and when someone, in those cases, a case can be made to have someone go on Ozempic or a similar drug to lose that weight, but it doesn't change the parameters that now you have a crutch. You have a long-term crutch, and the discipline wasn't learned.
Well, as humans, kind of the way our brain's wired is we have a work reward kind of mindset, and that is you put in hard work, you reap a reward. And things like this, there are plenty of examples, but Ozempic is just one of the examples of sort of breaking that mindset where maybe there wasn't really work put in, but then a desired result was achieved. And that kind of a little bit defeats the purpose, in my opinion. And like you said, you don't actually learn what you needed to learn along the way.
Right.
Because when we talk about wanting to be healthy, we talk about longevity and wanting to do it for the long haul. And that's a quick fix, but is it sustainable long term? Because if you told me, well, there's this new drug and it's Ozempic and you just take it and you can just take it for the rest of your life and there'll be no problems and you'll be just fine, you'll be healthy, skinny, whatever, then it'd be different. But I think as we dive into this study, I think we're going to find that it's not a long-term solution. It is kind of just a quick fix, slap some duct tape on it, but you're going to have to readdress the problem pretty quick. And this could actually make the problem worse.
Well, it's like everything, right? When you take drugs to get bigger and stronger, there's ramifications on the end that sometimes are greater than what you experienced on the front, or the sacrifice. It would be greater than the sacrifice you would have to make to achieve the goals naturally. When you are trying to lose weight in what I call an unnatural way, then you could have much greater costs at the end than at the beginning. And if you've done things naturally, your costs are just the time that you put into the gym and the sacrifice you made with food, all completely natural.
Yeah. So when Ozempic came out, and other, more generally, the term for these drugs is semaglutides. But when semaglutides came out, they originally started as type 2 diabetes medications that individuals were prescribed because they found that these drugs actually helped in lowering blood sugar. And that's the goal if you're a type 2 diabetic, is to lower your blood sugar. And we could talk about plenty of natural ways to do that, right? But this was a drug that achieved that end. What began to happen was people found as they were taking it that they were losing a lot of weight. And so naturally it became popular and attractive in the weight loss world to people who it wasn't even applicable to for their type 2 diabetes, right? Whether you got type 2 diabetes or not, you want to lose weight, you hop on this drug, you lose some weight. They've kind of found that it has a significant effect on the digestive and gastrointestinal tract and appetite suppressant. And that's kind of a lot of the reason why it works is it makes you not want to eat.
Right.
Right. But we need to kind of examine, is that healthy?
Right.
And that's what we kind of look at as we get into here, because there isn't really a lot of long-term data. Looks like these type of drugs were approved in 2019 by the FDA. So the maximum that we really have for like long-term is just a few years. But they have found some significantly troubling reactions. So what they listed here as adverse reactions, which was reported by over 5% or more of the patients. So at least 1 in 20 reported this, include nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, abdominal pain, and constipation. Now, those are side effects that a lot of times are listed with many of the drugs that Big Pharma pushes on us, right? But those are still not natural side effects that should be taking place.
Correct.
Right? If you're taking a drug and you're getting nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, abdominal pain, constipation, right? There's something going on with your digestive system that ain't right. And that should be a warning sign.
Yeah.
And obviously, you can achieve weight loss by that. If you are nauseous and vomiting and having diarrhea, you can't really eat much. You can't really gain any weight or take in much calories and process calories accurately. So then, of course, you're going to lose weight. But is that the healthy way to do it? And what they found as serious side effects in many people then thereafter in the long term, it lists here serious side effects of thyroid tumors, cancer, pancreatitis, hypoglycemia, acute kidney injuries, acute gallbladder disease, and DRP complications.
And this has only been out for 4 years.
Yeah. So this is people that couldn't have been taking it for more than a few years.
Yeah.
And are already seeing a lot of these really serious, life-threatening side effects, right? You know, you could argue that you could deal with nausea and vomiting. It would be unpleasant, but you could deal with it. But, you know, thyroid cancer, you know, that could do you in. And, you know, it's just proof that, you know, going on this drug is sort of, yes, maybe you're losing weight, but if you're getting cancer and getting all these major side effects, your health is obviously going in a negative direction.
Right.
So the goal, right, of the weight loss is to get should be to get healthier. But actually, we're finding your health is going in the wrong direction. So what we're kind of seeing here is a situation where you take this drug, you lose weight, you get skinnier, you look better, right? When people see you, they see a skinny person, but then come to find out because of the drugs you're taking, you're kind of starting to kill yourself in a way. You're getting these cancers and things, and your body's degrading, and it's not going to last long term. So on the outside, it looks good.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the flip side of this is that it's not like you take this and then you're off of it, right? You take this in higher doses, and then you go on a maintenance level as soon as you lose the weight for life, okay? So what is it? We don't know what the long-term effects of this is. You know, what does all these side effects mean in the long run? You know, and, you know, do these percentages increase, which I can imagine in some cases they would just increase as you continually stay on. It's kind of like, you know, inflammatories or dyes or things that you find in, you know, your preservatives you find in food. You're on them, it's that compound effect over and over and over and over and over. And so over time, develops into cancer, right? So, you know, I'm a fan of, I mean, again, I understand when the weight's so bad that you're having knee problems, you can't get out of your chair, you know, but I can't, and someone could make an argument for that. I mean, they're going to die. I mean, there's lots of stories of people in, you know, 300, 400, 500 pounds that die because of their weight, right? So you could make an argument for that, but that still doesn't, like I said, that doesn't take away the fact that now you have another problem.
Yeah, well, what's the alternative? Because, you say, oh, well, it's either. I mean, I know you don't mean this, but you're kind of saying it's either die or take Ozempic and lose the weight. But
Right.
there are other options.
Yeah.
And that's what we preach on this podcast.
Right.
Is how to do it the healthy way, and it can be done the healthy way. And it's sort of kind of a cop out to say, well, I can't lose the weight. I'm gonna get on Ozempic, and you're okay with the side effects when you could do it the right way. It'd take a lot of work. It'd take a lot more work, right? It wouldn't be instantly gratifying. It wouldn't be one of those
Right.
things, boom, I started it. Because if to our listeners, anybody who's seen somebody taking Ozempic, it's kind of like a night and day change, right? You see them, and then a few weeks or a month later, you see them again, and you're like, whoa, right? What's
Yeah.
happening?
Yeah.
And it's like that with almost everybody that starts taking it, because it's a night and day, quick change, instant gratification. It just happens.
Right.
Whereas weight loss through healthy means is not that way. Somebody starts working out, somebody starts eating healthy, it takes a few months, and it might be, 8 to 10, 12 weeks. And, then you're kind of like, oh, it looks like maybe you're losing a little bit of weight. Oh yeah. I've started losing a little bit. It doesn't happen instantly. It doesn't happen quickly. And I think that's the appeal of the Ozempic is boom, it happens right away. Like, oh, it's March. I'm going to get on it right now so I can be thin for summer.
Right.
It's kind of like when people would come into the gym. We've had many people do this, but they'll want to come into the gym in March, and they'll
Right.
say, "Oh, I want my 6-pack by Memorial Day for
Right.
for summer, for lake season," and it's like, well. You better already have a 4-pack if you want to have a 6-pack by Memorial Day, because it doesn't happen that quickly.
Right.
And it shouldn't happen that quick. And there's a reason why our bodies were created for things to work the way they work, is because we're not supposed to go from fat to fit in a month.
Well, I just had someone comment this morning, said, "Hey, I've lost 8 pounds," and and it's taken a few months, right? So it's happening slow. And I said, well, that's exactly why it should be. Why? Because your body has time to adjust with it, right? So what are you learning as you're going down? Discipline. You're learning discipline, and a long term. It takes habits, long-term virtues of discipline and accountability of what you eat, and practice of that for long term. And then when you get there, you've lost that weight, what do you have? Now you have the discipline. Okay, and that's the problem with these drugs, is that you lose it inside a very short period of time. What have you learned? I can take a drug, right? I can put a pill in my mouth. I haven't learned anything about, being disciplined and or accountable. And that's my only fear with this, is that you're right. There's other ways to lose that weight, but you're 500 pounds sitting in a chair. What's the other part of this that we don't talk about is the culture and medicine itself. Medicine is set up to treat the problem. They're not set up to solve the problem. And they are, when the guy in the white coat comes and tells you, here's this pill, you're dangerously overweight, and we'll get you where you need to be. Well, who are you going to listen to? He's the professional, right? So that we have to change the culture and the way medicine is. Medicine needs to be a system of solving the problem and not perpetuating it by only putting a Band-Aid on the problem.
Well, it's not always just treating the problem, right? And I think, at the individual practitioner level, right, those are going to be, by and large, good people that have the best intentions in mind. They're just following what they've been taught
Right.
in medical school. But when we look at the people actually creating these drugs, what are they doing? So let's just think about this logically for a second. You go in, you're overweight, you want medication to help you with that. So the doctor, who has been taught, says, well, there's this semaglutide that would help you with it, right? Or your blood sugar is too high, you need something to help with that. And you take that. Well, then not only does it not solve the problem, but it actually begins to create more problems, as we found through the studies here, that then require more intervention and more treatment. So now you're on this drug, and maybe then you end up with cancer many years later because of it. Well, now the medical industry has another thing to treat you for and another way to make money off of you.
Right.
And, that sounds really nefarious. And I'm not saying that your doctor is out there trying to do this to you, but at the high levels of the big pharma, it's a business, and they're trying to make money on you, and they're looking for extra revenue streams.
Right.
And so if they can figure out how to get extra revenue streams through medications, they're going to do it.
Well, I think medical industry is kind of a plug and play system. I mean, it's a system that you go to school for, and then a lot of people have good intentions, but they're being plugged into a system that is there to make money off perpetuating the problem. And, like you said, hey, I solved the weight problem, but now I have all these other problems that now have to be managed for the rest of your life, or it could cause even greater issues that you'll have to be treated for. So it's not, hey, the doctor saying these are the things you need to do with your nutrition and with your exercise. And, ultimately it comes down, as we both know, it comes down to the individual.
I was listening to a doctor talk this week, actually, and they made the comment that, I don't know if this is accurate because this is what this doctor said, but they said during their medical school, they had 30 minutes of one class during their entire medical school was spent on nutrition. I'll compare that to they had an entire semester filled with just pharmacology, which was the study of which medications to prescribe for which diseases.
Right.
So think about that. You have 30 minutes of nutrition, which can prevent the diseases and a lot of times get rid of the diseases, versus an entire semester of learning about which big pharma drugs to prescribe.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something seriously wrong going on. When you look at the medical community and the health and wellness, right? What I call, your gym, nutrition, there's a disconnect, right? They don't really play nice with each other. And that goes back to what happened, almost 100 years ago when you had Rockefeller change everything. And he changed the entire way medicine is viewed to be pharmacology, and solve everything with, what they call him. He had, Rockefeller tried to monopolize the oil industry, and that monopoly got broken down by the government. But he still had, gosh darn it, there's a chemical that he has that's in oil that could be used in pharmacology. And he developed all these drugs, and so he still got his monopoly in a way. Mm. So anyway, the point is like he changed everything, and by subverting and giving money and changing the schools and got rewriting the books, and it was a process. And so now we have about 100 years worth of Rockefeller medicine, which is always about let's treat the symptom and not solve the problem. And so you're right, a lot of these doctors and nurses are, good intentions, good people, right? But they're in this system that's not there to fix the problem.
Well, they're there to help.
Right.
Right. They got into that industry because they want to help people and they want to heal people. I heard a doctor talking one time about this, and she said, she went through all of her schools and she was really excited to be able to get out and help heal people of disease, because that's what you think about when you think about a doctor. And she said she got out and, she started seeing patients and she started treating them based on what she learned, right? When they have this ailment, you prescribe them this medicine. And when they have this disease, you prescribe them this medicine. And she's like, I just did exactly what I was taught and what I was told. And these people got less healthy.
Yeah.
You know, I'd get them on the medication, and maybe it would help with the ailment that they had a little bit, you know, keep it under control. But then they'd have another one, you know, and then another one. And she'd watch these people as they go downhill and they need more and more medication and they get less and less healthy. And her true intention and goal was to help these people. And she realized that that's not what's happening. These people are not getting help. These people are getting unhealthy and under her watch, you know, and she was taking it very hard. And she had to really take a step back and take a look at what is going on here and why is this not working, because this is not how it's supposed to work. And I think that's exactly how a lot of doctors feel. A lot of doctors see what's wrong, but, you know, they can't really step up and say anything at risk of losing everything that they've spent a ton of time and money for. You know, you talk about 8 years of school, residency, hundreds of thousands of dollars spent on school, you know, and you say something that's a little bit out of line and you lose it all.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I talked to, this is kind of off topic a little bit, but it kind of talks about that mentality about, I went to an event, to be unnamed, some years ago. That was in another city. It was a conference, and there was doctors and nurses there. And one of the doctors was a member of the U.S. Olympic team, and our consultant, I should say. And he'd been with them for years. And, you know, it came when the vaccines came out for the COVID-19. It was, you're on the U.S. Olympic team. It's not an option, right? You have to take these vaccines, or you're off the team. So, you know, he was not a fan of them, and they gave these shots to all the U.S. Olympic team members that were under training. 40% developed some heart issues. 40%. Okay. So now they can come up with all the excuses in the world, but cause and effect here. And he said, I can't say a word or I'll lose everything. And that tells you something. You know, there is some nefarious stuff going on when you're harming people and you can't say something, right? So that's kind of the extreme, and we're not really talking about that particular issue because that's a whole nother issue. But it speaks to the concept of, you know, going outside the box when it's the medical community, you know, and approaching things with a different approach. You can kind of get ostracized.
Well, that definitely goes against just how this country was founded, to be honest, with the First Amendment and free speech. Why would we not want people to be able to say what they're seeing, what they're noticing freely? Then we can always test that, right? So if you say, if you bring this to the table and you say, hey, for instance, the Ozempic, say there's a doctor prescribing Ozempic and seeing all these harsh side effects and just says, hey, this is what I'm seeing. Is anybody else seeing this? You know, and get other doctors together. Oh, yeah, I'm seeing this. And when we start putting these pieces together, that's the whole point of it, right? To figure out the problem, figure out these issues. But when people are saying, oh, hush, hush, you can't say anything. You're not allowed to. You're not allowed. You know something's going on. Something's fishy going on anytime that's happening. And so always keep an eye out for what you're not allowed to say.
Right.
Because typically that's the most truthful stuff, is what I've come to find.
Yeah, I mean, that's, you know, and I think you're definitely on that path. I've been very cautious since probably 2007 about who I work for, right? Either I work contract, or I'm very picky about who the person is I'm working for, or I work for myself. Because the freedom of speech is under attack. So, especially in the medical community. But anyway, I'm sidetracking off of it. I mean, we've kind of left our topic a little bit, but I think it's still pertinent in ways.
No, absolutely. And I think that was a good topic about Ozempic and semaglutides, but also about other similar things. And I think the conclusion is just basically, you know, it's better for you to put in the work and do it the right way, because if it's too good to be true, it usually is. And what we see here is a quick fix turning out to have some negative side effects for it, some potentially very serious long-term side effects, right?
Correct.
You know, and when they do these studies, you know, what you have to remember is, say you take a drug for a year or 2 years or however long these trials last, and the people don't die, then they say, oh, well, it's safe, you know, but that's like some of these things that are starting to pop up. It's very small instances, but they're having all these different types of cancers, kidney injury, gallbladder, things like that popping up after a few years in very small instances, like, for instance, right here, gallbladder disease in only 1.9% of patients. Well, you know, that's not a super, super high instance of it, but we're starting to see it pop up, but yet we don't do anything about it. How do we know what the side effects are going to be long-term if they only study this for a couple years?
Right.
Because really we need to know like 20, 30 years, what's it going to look like? I mean, one of these I saw where they were going to release the thyroid cancer was one they were talking about, and it says here at the bottom that the official results are expected between 2035 and 2037.
Wow.
So it's going to be between 10 and 15 years before we even find out the actual truth about the effects of semaglutides on thyroid cancer.
So it sounds like the people that are taking it now are guinea pigs.
Basically.
Yeah.
And that's with almost any medication.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, that's a long time to wait for your results, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, in the interim, I mean, it's not to push this topic, but it's kind of it's indicative of our culture. And there's no other way to put it. You know, things that are when you want the quick fix, right? Which is really against our nature as far as what's healthy for us. It's indicative of a bigger problem in our culture, and we're all affected by it. I mean, all of us to a certain extent have to constantly fight that temptation to take the quick fix, right? And you know, and try to recognize it. That's the other problem. What am I cheating here? And by cheating, I don't mean morally, but ethically, and also there's the ethical and moral responsibility of how the drug came about, and then and what goes along with that, and then there is the personal responsibility to do what's best for your body. So,
let me ask you a question. Let's say that long-term trials were completed. This drug had been around for 20, 30, 40 years, whatever, and they said 0 side effects at all. But yet it still did the things that it is doing. Mm-hmm. What would your opinion be on it then?
I'd say that drug have no possibility of existing.
Well, okay.
But outside of that, I still, because of the ramifications of taking away personal responsibility and discipline, I still would be against it. Fortunately, we don't live in the world where there's things in the world that just give us what we need with no consequences. Otherwise, everyone would. I mean, the reality is that poor choices in life always come with consequences. Sometimes we don't recognize it or we ignore them, but they always come with consequences, and that's the way that God designed the world. But if the world didn't function like that, and there was actually a drug that did all those things with no ramifications to the body, then it would still be indicative of a problem of ethics and morals as far as what's the better way to go about things, you know, because the qualities of earning something, right? The qualities, it's everything from, hey, I've worked really hard to buy this product and I've saved months and months for it, and now I go and buy it. And what do I do with it? I take care of it. I respect the hours and this time and the investment and the suffering of, I should say, not suffering, but the sacrifice that I made to invest and buy the product, right? That's a natural result to buying something or investing in something, because you know how many hours it took to buy that, right? Or maybe it's to, hey, I want to take a family on a vacation. So I know how many hours I had to invest to make that happen. And so that vacation becomes a cherished event because it's not just something that was just given to you. So there's something very different about when, hey, here's this, and I'll just give it a price, here's this $10,000 item, and I'm just giving it to you, versus when you went and you spent 5 years trying to buy that $10,000 item because you have other expenses, and you're going to look at it much differently, right? And there's a lot more care that's going to go into it, and to make sure, and a lot more respect. So, it's, you see it all the time. I mean, you see these this entitlement culture where these kids are just given things, and with no time invested to earn it. And now we have an entire entire group of citizens that believe that they're entitled to something they didn't earn. I see it all the time now. I should get your money because you have too much, right? Or the government should take care of me because I exist. I mean, it's literally what we're to now. So that culture's and seeps into all of us, that we have to fight off and be disciplined about what are the qualities of the Christian life. It's not that. That's for sure.
Yeah, it seems like maybe the appeal for a semaglutide drug is more indicative of a bigger problem that's going on in this world. Not as much where this drug is the problem. It's more of the problem, like you've been talking about, that's really the issue.
Yeah, I do think I think everything that comes up in life is something that's been growing over time, right? Like a lot of the problems we have now started decades ago. A breakdown of the family, and when the family started getting attacked and broken down, well, that's the core of everything, is a strong family. And as that family starts to get broken down, you have all kinds of symptoms coming up. And one of them is ethics, morals, responsibility, and being disciplined.
Well, I will say, from what I've noticed and maybe things I've thought about, is I talked about my triangle earlier, spirit, mind, and body. And I think the breakdown of our spiritual health and our faith as a world, as a country, is trickling down to the breakdown of our mental health and physical health as well.
Yeah.
And that's what I think's really driving it.
Yeah, it's a symptom of the bigger problem, right? We've talked about it on earlier podcasts. The number of people that are unhealthy keeps growing. So, and we're in arguably one of the wealthiest countries in the world, but with that wealth comes what? A lot of self-indulging and bigger problems, a breakdown of separating ourselves from God, and family breaks down because we become more about ourselves.
I had a really interesting experience last night.
Okay.
I went to Chipotle.
Oh.
And I hadn't been out anywhere in a really long time, and we decided, we're going to go out and have some Chipotle,
Yeah.
And it's as far as eating food out, it's a fairly healthy option, right? And we sat down to ate it there, but we were kind of right by the door, and we were seeing all the people that were coming in and out. And I know you go out, anywhere you go, you're going to see lots of extremely overweight people, but the amount of extremely overweight people that walked in and out that door just over the 45 minutes that we were there was insane. Almost every single one of them. Yeah. And I'm talking like almost like waddling level.
Yeah.
And it's just shocking to me as a country and as a nation that we are at this level. Like, these are people who, they couldn't run They couldn't sprint 100 meters if they needed to get away from something. They couldn't lift somebody or something to try to save themselves, let alone hardly lift themselves to try to save themselves.
Right.
Go up or down many flights of stairs. Like, the fact that we're at that level out of country is extremely alarming and extremely problematic.
Yeah. It affects our friends, our families. It affects. I mean, but again, it's indicative of a bigger problem, right?
Yeah.
You look in I can't remember who it was. I saw something recently. You see so much. We have so much information coming at us anymore, and so sometimes I have trouble remembering where I saw this. But it was talking about the 1910s and 1920s. And when you saw someone extremely overweight, that was a rare sight. It was very uncommon to see someone extremely overweight back then. And that's because the culture, the lifestyle, and the discipline of the time was so much different. I mean, think about how everyone dressed. Okay, everyone wore suits. Didn't matter what you were doing, you wore a suit, right? All the ladies dressed from top to bottom, covering their whole body. It was a different time. Now, regardless if you think that was crazy or you think today is immoral or is okay, that's not the point. The point is that there is a very different mindset, both all the way from the physical to the mental, to the spiritual, and to how we approached work life, how we handled suffering. Back then, suffering was much more understood and valued than it is today, right? Because there's value to suffering that we don't value today. And because we view suffering that way, people just, human nature is to run from it, get away. I don't want this in my life. But back in the, early, long decades before now, people they valued the suffering of, and they handled it with grace, right? They were very strong people because I remember talking to my grandma and how they lived. Well, most families would fall over and couldn't handle the way my grandparents lived. Washed all the clothes outside by hand. They put wood in the stove to cook food. There was a labor involved in everything, right? It wasn't you plug something in and done, right? It was everything had labor to it, from the morning you got up till the time you went to bed. To earn food to put on your plate was much more involved, right? It took hours, not minutes, to function in the daily chores of life. So just extrapolate that to the difficulties that they faced. So, we have things, it's crazy. We have things much more handed to us, but yet we're so much more not able to, we have much less discipline and accountability now. And I think the majority of that is that we removed a lot of the natural difficulties of life that now we feel entitled. I mean, I'm sorry, I could go on and on this, but anyway.
But I think the human nature at a deep level naturally craves that.
Yeah.
Right. So it's been removed from our culture for the large part, but we kind of crave it. One of the things that popped in my head while you were talking there was the concept of hunting. Right. I have a lot of friends and people I know that really enjoy hunting. I enjoy hunting too. But I think about it and I think, okay, you go out, you spend all this time, all this effort, practice, whatever. You sit in, say you're deer hunting, you sit in a deer stand, you track the deer, you've got to shoot it, you've got to take it out, clean it, get all the meat if you're doing it yourself, to get all the meat packaged up, get in the freezer, whatever, and now you have food to eat.
Yeah.
And if you do the sort of financial analysis on how much time it took you and all the things that went into getting that meat, it'd been a lot cheaper just to go buy meat at the store.
Yeah.
Right. But the fulfillment's not there of walking to the store and you just grab the meat and buy it versus you actually went out, you tracked the animal, like you hunted it, you like cut it up with your own hands, you like put it in your own freezer, like you worked for it, and like we crave that, and we will actually go out of our way to spend more money in order to get that.
I mean, we only got refrigeration and like just at the turn of the 19th or 20th century. Yeah. And so you think about that hunting was an absolute necessity, not more than 100, probably 120, 130 years ago. That's how
Especially
you
in
got your food.
remote areas.
Yeah. So, when refrigeration came along and you could, freeze your meat and go and buy it in a store, that's when things changed and you started, slaughter the cow and put it in the freezer.
One, you ate what you could find, right? Because before refrigeration, food couldn't travel long distances because it wasn't able to stay cold and be preserved.
Right.
So you ate what was in your locality, what was around you. And you could grow fruits, vegetables, things. You could, raise certain animals and kill them. But it's kind of like if you killed the animal, then you had to eat it.
Yeah.
Because, there was no preserving it for a long period of time.